BiaVest is a food-focused investment fund which has just completed its first 2 investments. And joining me now for more is BiaVest Chief Executive Hilliard Lombard. Morning, Hilliard.
Good morning, Gavan.
Now, you have a background in this industry. You've worked at Arista, you worked at Valio Foods, and now you've set up this fund. Why is this sector attractive to you in financial terms? Is it healthy margins?
Well, first of all, I guess I would have a passion for food businesses, and the opportunity, I think, for food businesses to grow out of Ireland and expand out of Ireland into Europe is quite significant. I think maybe for your listeners, just to give you a bit of background first, maybe on BiaVest, we're Ireland's first and only kind of food-focused private equity company. And the sweet spot for our investment is typically founder-led, medium-sized food businesses with international growth prospects, and which would ultimately benefit from our capital, our expertise and market knowledge. So in that regard, David McKiernan and I at BiaVest have, say, 50 years experience, as you've alluded to there, in the sector to bring to our investment partners. And the objective that we have for BiaVest is to build a diversified portfolio of high-quality food businesses with potential for international growth and indeed domestic growth.
Yeah, now you mentioned a diversified portfolio, and I think that's a good way of describing your first 2 investments, which are kind of diametrically opposed in one way. You've got the vegan ice cream business Nobo, and the other is the donut company Offbeat Donuts. So you have the healthy alternative on one hand and you have the treat product on the other. Absolutely,
but ultimately both are brilliant indigenous Irish brands. Nobo has got a superb chocolate ice cream that's vegan, and Offbeat Donuts are quality, freshly made donuts every single day. And in life, we have kind of a balance. I think there's a lot of research being done, particularly in millennials, where you see that during the week they're particularly healthy, but when they indulge, they want a quality treat, and so therefore balance is important, and actually bits in the middle that are kind of neither healthy or indulgent are kind of falling away. Just to give you an example, Gavan, of what I mean by Nobo and Offbeat Donuts being, pretty good brands. First of all, they've common trait is kind of ambitious and passionate founders, and that's what we're seeking out, and both Nobo and Offbeat have that. For example, Nobo, with limited investment, the founders have a strong presence already in the west coast of Canada, which is great to see, particularly around Vancouver, and in the next few months plan a rollout in Canada nationwide.
Well, we all know there's a lot of trendy people in Vancouver, so I'm sure the vegan ice cream is a hit there. But I wanted to ask you about the donuts, Hilliard, because is there a concern that maybe they're a bit of a fad? Because a few years ago in Dublin, certainly, there was loads of donut shops springing up around the place, and then there appeared to be a significant retrenchment after that.
I don't see it that way. I kind of see that, again, it's a category that has actually kind of grown. It has historically been strong in other countries through the US and has maintained itself. It's ultimately a dessert, and Offbeat are absolutely superb at, addressing the different, be it Mother's Day or Easter or Paddy's Day, and creating different offerings. So it's more than just a donut. To give you an example, actually, on Offbeat Donut, we just, in the middle of the pandemic, actually at the start of December, opened a new store in Blanchardstown Shopping Centre, and it's performing really, really well. It's actually one of our busiest stores. So it just gives you an example, and there's already good donut offerings in that area, in the shopping centre, and we plan to open further stores over the next year on top of the 10 that we already have. So I think the balance piece is important. And actually, when you think about COVID, Gavan, what I think has come out for us as consumers is a focus on quality, a focus on provenance, a focus on premium, and both those brands deliver. On that.
Yeah, but if restaurants are opening up again soon, is that a potential problem? Because obviously with closures, people are maybe going to look for their treats somewhere else, and it might be to these companies.
I think ultimately, I think there's always going to be a mix. Ultimately, perhaps, during COVID, we might have consumed at times a little more than normal, but ultimately we consume pretty much the same. Yes, we'll change where we consume and how we consume, and hospitality, one hopes, will have a great recovery when it does come back. But I think there's room for quality ultimately and good offerings. So if you actually think about COVID for a second in terms of the at-home kind of dining experience, we've done so much at home around food through COVID. We're getting restaurant quality food delivered to our home. We're getting, other deliveries. We're much more time to involve ourselves in cooking, etc. So I think coming out of COVID, what you're going to see is, and you're already seeing it, a demand from consumers for, really quality experiences. And that's part of where we would be focused as we sit down with food companies and figure out where are the opportunities. It's been a really challenging time, but like we've all had a lived experience in COVID, it's going to continue in some shape or form. And that has changed us, and it has ultimately changed consumer preferences. And we, as food businesses, need to be on top of that and deliver for the consumer.
Well, what about e-commerce? Because there is a shift towards that, certainly. Now, if you look at groceries, it obviously it's still less than 7% of the market, but it's grown fast. And I wonder how that impacts your portfolio, because I think the serendipity of walking down the aisle and something catching your eye, that can kind of be helpful. But if everyone is shopping online, maybe you don't have that anymore.
I think you'll have both. So the way I would kind of look at it again is that two things are going to kind of drive or continue to drive growth, and it's actually an acceleration. So, the term is that we've moved maybe 10 years in e-commerce in 1 year. And when we go to a destination, and more so now, as we get hopefully further easing of restrictions and we move somewhat beyond COVID, whatever destination we go to, we'll want a serious experience, okay? And so therefore, that's part of kind of what food companies will and can deliver on for people in terms of all that goes with that. In terms of digital, I think McDonald's put it extremely well when they talked of the focus on 3Ds, which is drive-through, digital and delivery. So focusing kind of on the digital side, I think people have, again, more people have come into digital in terms of that experience. They've used it more often. Yes, there might be a pullback post the pandemic, but ultimately it has brought more people to the space, and ultimately customers and the actual companies themselves have jumped into it in a big way and created much more offerings. Given the example of my parents ordering fish from Kerry every month, and they freeze it and use it during the month, that Gavan, is probably not going to change after the pandemic. Would they have done that before? No. Will they do that in the future? Probably yes. There's loads of those small examples that we've changed, and some of them we'll hold on to, some of them we won't.
Okay, well, very interesting stuff, Hilliard. We have to leave it there, unfortunately. That's a BiaVest Chief Executive, Hilliard Lombard. We'll be back right after this.